Welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here to celebrate the project at Triple Creek and to introduce and celebrate our newest partner, which is the beaver that have joined us at that site this year. We found that film that you just saw on the internet when we were looking for the Okanogan name for that partner. And it is a silent film that Kodak made in the 1930s that was set to narration by the Okanogan elder Sarah McLeod from who lived in British Columbia. And this was organized by a linguist named John Lyon, who's a professor at UBC Okanagan in Kelowna. And so we wanted to share it with you because it's such an amazing thing to see the beaver doing their thing and also to hear it narrated in the language of this place. And so we want to really acknowledge Sarah McLeod, who did that narration, and to be really excited about the beaver that we have in our little restoration project. Yay.
Okay, so we're going to get started. I am so thrilled to see all of your smiling faces here. Welcome to a new season of Highland Wonders 2025-26. Yay, it's good to be back. My name is Jen Weddle, and this is Sarah Kliegman, and we're the co-directors of Okanogan Highlands Alliance. And I wanted to just take a moment to recognize our amazing board of directors who support OHA and us in so many different and so many meaningful ways. Many of them are here. Hannah Kliegman is our board president. Rick Massey is not here tonight. He is our vice president. John McReynolds is our treasurer. And Charlie Walker is our secretary. Tia Wold with Warren over here. Berta Villa and Elliot Phillips, who maybe I haven't seen yet. So we so appreciate their service and everything they do for Okanogan Highlands Alliance and furthering the conservation efforts. Okay, so to get started, we are thrilled to be celebrating the Triple Creek project tonight. The Triple Creek project kind of embodies OHA in a lot of different ways. You can see OHA's goals, objectives, and strategies and ways of working together coming through in different aspects of this project. And so for that reason, we're kind of just going to jump into this tonight. And we are so excited to be also joined by Ethan Parrish, who is sitting here. So Ethan is part of the film crew that helped develop the Triple Creek documentary, which is going to be premiering at the end of this event tonight. He has a background in geology and geomorphology and education, and we're so excited that he has chosen a filmmaking pathway because it's been a delight to get to know Ethan over the last year. He is charismatic and enthusiastic and interested and curious, and all of those attributes kind of like come through in the documentary that we're going to share at the end of the night. So he currently lives in Wenatchee, is an old friend of Tia, and he works for a really cool film company called North 40 Films that focuses on creating documentaries that kind of shine a light on conservation and social issues. And so it's been wonderful to work with them. So we're excited to have Ethan come up and tell us a little bit about storytelling through film in a few minutes. But first you have to listen to us. So we don't have an intermission planned for tonight. We're just going to, Sarah and I have some things to share about Triple Creek and why we love it and appreciate it so. And then Ethan will share with us his presentation, and then we will share the world premiere of Working with Nature, OHA's newest documentary. So the CCC has provided desserts and tea and coffee, so I want you to just feel comfortable and everything, just hopping up whenever you need to go and enjoy the refreshments. Okay. Okay, so just a little bit of background. Many of the faces in this crowd are in our slideshow and have been to Triple Creek, but so that we're all on the same page, Triple Creek is located, wow, that's kind of perfect, just north of Chesaw in the Okanogan Highlands, and it is located along Myers Creek. It's called Triple Creek because it's where Myers, Thorpe, and Bolster Creek come together. And these waters originate off of Bonaparte Mountain and Buckhorn Mountain, which are wonderful shared places in the Okanogan Highlands. The Triple Creek Wetland has historically supported a diverse and healthy, functional wetland. In the late 1990s, a rain on snow event caused water to rush through the land, and it cut a deep channel. One that was like previously lots of little channels winding its way through the wetland became one deep kind of straight channel. And that resulted in the floodplain drying out and being taken over by the invasive reed canary grass, which you can see in many of these pictures. The wetland lost its ability to store and slow water down, and the habitat kind of became less suitable for the diversity of creatures that the land stewards at Triple Creek loved and cherished so much. And so in 2015, kind of fast forward a little bit, but in 2015 the Triple Creek Restoration Project began. And we are thrilled to be celebrating over a decade of restoration work up at Triple Creek, and so excited to recognize and appreciate all of the people and organizations and agencies that have been a part of this project over the last decade. And we're going to kind of frame it in all the exciting things that are happening right now. Sarah's going to start us off.
So, in that vein, we're going to say, this week at Triple Creek, we saw, and we're going to go from there. So we saw a lot of cool things this week. Was it Monday or Tuesday? Monday. We went there on Monday, and we walked down the creek, and it was so incredibly amazing and inspiring to be there this week. But just like it is every time we go up there. Like, the beavers is absolutely amazing, because up till now, it's been, we go up there, we do various things, we see the results of those things, nature, the creek does what the creek does, and we make observations. But now we have a living, breathing partnership with these creatures that are up there working 24/7. And so one of the most amazing things is, well, what was super interesting to us is how the beavers came to be up there in the first place. So since the very beginning of the project, OHA's been considering, okay, well, what do we need to improve this ecosystem? Well, we need to improve the condition of this creek so that the water can slow down and spread out. And we need to have an increase in diversity of the riparian vegetation. And so little by little, year by year, those things have been being done with the beaver dam analogs in the creek, with the planting plots, and little by little, changes have happened. So the plants that so many people have, even people in this room who are involved in planting, went from little willow whips to giant trees over 20 feet tall. But we looked at each other and we said, well, are they ready? Because they were behind fences. We'd fenced them so that the deer couldn't browse them and the beavers couldn't get at them until they were ready. So we looked at each other and we're like, I don't know, what do you think? Are they ready? And we talked to our friends and we talked to our advisors and we talked to other people doing this work and we looked at each other, are we ready? And last fall, we decided to go for it. We decided to take down the fences, and Lisa did an amazing amount of work, very, very painstaking work, to get those fences removed. And then we waited. And this spring, in spring of 2025, lo and behold, we got a message from Baca, I think that was the first one, there's a beaver, we've got a video. And then shortly after, Lisa's like, there's video, there's beavers up there. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's beavers up there. And you know what? We had planned months in advance to have the film crew come the very next week. That was planning. So at first the beavers were taking these like 2-3 inch diameter willows. That was their main thing. They took the cottonwoods that they could get their teeth on right away. But they didn't touch the red osier dogwood at first. But now, and some of you maybe have seen this, they've cut giant alders down. And the red osier dogwood has become palatable to them later in the season. So we're learning every day about what they are interested in. And we don't know what they're doing necessarily with the alder. Some people say they don't even like it, or they won't eat it, or they won't touch it, but they're touching it. So the point here is that every time we visit, we learn a little bit more, or we learn a lot more, especially when things don't turn out how we expect them to. Like, wow, those are big alders that they're dragging into the creek now. And we are just so grateful to be learning from and working with nature in this project where natural processes are responsible for everything that we're seeing. We've kind of done these like nudges one way or another along the way. Even taking down the fences, that was like a choice we made. We did this little nudge, and then all this other stuff has happened. And the bottom line is, we didn't do it alone.
Okay, so this week at Triple Creek, we checked our wildlife cameras that we put up about a month ago. We got brand new wildlife cameras. And so we checked them, and there was 500 pictures of wildlife on those. I mean, that's pretty good for a month. There was over 200 pictures of beavers. There was white-tailed deer, and there was mule deer. A lot of the pictures are in here. There was bird pictures like the flicker, and there was not just otter, but also a mink. So that's like, it was really amazing to watch that. And all of these characters are part of the ecosystem of Triple Creek, and it's such a good sign that we're seeing them, because it means that Triple Creek is supporting their lives in some way. And that is one of the main goals of our project, is to improve and protect and support a habitat that can sustain a diversity of wildlife and plants as well, and fungi and bacteria and all of the living creatures that contribute to making the wetland ecosystem healthy and thriving. But the wildlife cameras only capture a little bit of what's going on in Triple Creek. There's people that help us figure out what's going on as well. And one of the main people that rings our bells is Lisa Eversgard, who is sitting right here in the middle. Doesn't want any credit, but she's right here. Lisa does a lion's share of the work up in the riparian area. She does a ton of the weaving, most of the weaving. She helps with education. She repairs the mowers and patches flat tires, and she's just amazing. She does it all. She takes huge piles of mulch and spreads them out and decimates those piles of mulch and turns them into planting plots for us every year. But in the spring especially, I feel like we hear from Lisa. She's one of the first people that we hear from. And in 2023 was a really notable flood year. And it was as the spring went by, Lisa's messages were every few days were wow, the water's high, wow, the water's higher, it's really high. And that's one of the ways that we learn about what's going on out there is from Lisa and then from other community members that send us messages and photos and videos. And I have to say that a lot of that culture was set up by the land stewards, some of whom are here tonight. Maybe you could wave. Sandy and Harris, Deb, Baca, and McGill are not here, One Pine. But since the beginning of this project, the land stewards have established this culture of learning and culture of education up at Triple Creek that has really expanded the meaning and the value of the project. Every time we say, we'd like to have a field trip up there, they're yes, do it. And there's been K through 12 kids up there, there's been restoration practitioners up there, there's community members up there, and this has increased exponentially the impact of the Triple Creek project because people are learning the value of wetlands, they're seeing what restoration strategies can do, and they're empowered to go and take what they learn to other places and protect water and wetlands and other places. So I'm gonna just do a shout out to the land stewards for establishing that and for taking the steps toward restoration that they have, and recognizing it as a process. It's been wonderful to work with this group. And so, speaking of connecting,
yeah, so one of the big goals, one of the big ideas about this project was that Myers Creek at the beginning of, after the flood, after the incision, was 10 or 12 feet deep in a lot of places, so that water wasn't able to connect with the wetland anymore. And so, there's this thought, oh, well, if only we could raise the level of the stream bed and then the water could connect with the wetland and we could reconnect. But at the beginning, that seemed so daunting. So maybe it was enough to just re-wet let the water seep into the ground and re-wet the ground. But this week at Triple Creek, what we experienced when we went up there was that the ground is so wet. It's so squishy. When you walk around, your feet get wet. So we took WDFW staff on a field trip in September after this incredibly dry summer we had. My feet were soaked. I'm that's wetland rehydration in action. The creek is running higher right now, what we saw this week, because of the recent rain, but the water is moving so slowly and gently through the reach. It's spread out because of the beaver dam analogs, but also because there are beavers there that are helping spread it out even more. The beaver dam analogs that we've installed have new weave in them, thanks to Lisa, but also new weave thanks to the beavers. It's so amazing to see in some of this is 2023. That's that flood when Lisa was like, "Hello, pay attention." But some of the pictures you can see the green of the weave that Lisa put in, and then the little sticks that the beavers put in front of it. So over the years, one of the ways that we've quantified the changes that we have observed from our experience is with topographical surveys. And these investigations use GPS data and reference points to kind of quantify the deepest part of the creek with respect to the top of the bank and to determine how the stream has changed over time. And so what the topo survey data tells us is that the creek has gotten a lot longer over time. So it's almost 30% longer than it was when we started. So there's my picture. It's the one behind. So the yellow line is how long the creek was in 2015 when they first did data collection and got this data. The blue line is how long the creek is now. And it's longer because it's making all these S-curves now throughout the reach. And you can see some of the BDAs are in black little lines up there. Those are, some of them you're like, oh, that makes sense, that the creek is kind of going around the BDAs. The red is where the power of the stream has carved away the sediment or the gravel that was there. And the blue is where the sediment has built up in the stream bed. And so in some places we've got 7 feet of aggradation. So like Jen, 6 feet tall, that's like a foot over Jen's head. That's all sediment. It's amazing how much material has come into the creek area, and so much of it is actually from this place, from the creek in this reach. So a lot of it's just reorganized, remodeled. And what's cool about that is that this technique is perfectly suited for this type of environment. It wouldn't work everywhere, right? It wouldn't work in a place where there wasn't the sediment that was available to be recruited to be able to move around and make this new landscape that we see now. So this is the draft of the very newest topographical survey. We just got this week, hot off the press, and we're really excited to be able to share this kind of imagery with you, even though it's kind of like a little esoteric. It's representative of the amount of progress that we've made toward this goal of building up the stream bed, aggrading the stream bed, and making the creek more curvy so that it's both longer and has a less steep slope so that the water can move slowly. So I thought we could have a little interactive part because you've been such very good listeners. Wetlands. Why are wetlands important? We're doing so much work, right? Over all these years, why are we doing this work? Habitat. Sponge. Ducks. Love. Willow. Fire protection. Filtration. Willow.
Dogwood osier.
Red osier dogwood. Elderberry. Flood amelioration. Biodiversity. What? People? Beaver, yes. People, sure. So many reasons, right? There's so many reasons that we all are so excited and proud to be involved in this project that slows and spreads out the water, diversifies the riparian community, allowing so many organisms to thrive, increasing the complexity of the system. Little by little, we're making progress towards all of these goals.
We forgot to say heron.
Great blue herons, right. So
That was the motivation.
totally. So when one of the things that was there before the flood is there was a great blue heron rookery, and for the people who have lived on that land for so long, those herons were like, the loss of those herons was such a critical loss. And I don't know if any of you saw the great blue herons walking there, but it's really amazing to have them, very stately walking down the creek, making it their home again. And maybe one day they'll take up
around in a large group.
Take up residence again. Yeah.
Okay, so to finish up, the kind of last thing that we saw that we're going to talk about today is, Sarah mentioned how we were seeing the weaves that Lisa had put out on the new post lines and the repaired post lines that had just been installed in September, with the beavers weaving on top of that. And adding even grasses, like stuff that we didn't really know that they were going to use, or stuff that we knew was there, but we didn't expect for the beavers to be harvesting grass, for example. Yeah, green canary grass, which, and so it was so heartening to see that happening for two reasons. And one is that the fact that the beavers are up there working on top of what Lisa was working on means that we're on the right track and working together, and that the beavers are there every day. Like, Lisa weaves maybe once or twice a year, and the beavers are there every day working on it. So there's the potential for things to change really quickly from here on out up at Triple Creek. The other thing that we have to remember, though, that when we see that, is that we don't actually know what's going to happen. And that's a really important part of this process, is working with nature means working with the unexpected. And we have these long-term goals of the great blue heron rookery coming back and beavers taking up management, and we don't know how that's gonna happen. We don't know if the beavers will stick around or what's gonna happen next. But the exciting part is finding out what's gonna happen next, because there's a lot of different ways to get to our long-term goals and dreams, and it's so cool to be a part of it and to work with nature and to take things slowly and to observe and to adapt to the changes that we see and to observe again. And this is what we've been doing this whole time, and we're really excited to see what happens moving forward. And so I think that kind of concludes what we wanted to share with you about Triple Creek. Now those are our factors. Yeah. And we'd like to turn the microphone over to Ethan to share with us a little bit about storytelling through film.
All right. Okay. Well, as you all settle back down in your seats, I don't really think I need to introduce myself as much as I thought I did, because I was so graciously and kindly introduced already. But my name's Ethan, and it is truly a pleasure to be here. I was going to betray the fact that I didn't actually have a traditional background in storytelling and documentary film, but they did that for me. Okay. Bear with me on this one. And also, I'm not good at handheld mics, so if this dips away, somebody just yell at me and I'll bring it back up. Okay? But like was said, I actually have a background in geology. I'm not, didn't go to film school, didn't do that. I've done film for a long time, but until about 2 years ago, I was a geologist. I finished up a PhD in geology at the University of Wisconsin 2 years ago.
Closer. Come closer.
Right here, yeah.
There? Yeah. Okay. All right. Eat the mic. That's what we're talking about. All right. So I did a PhD in geology at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and during that time, I worked in film and a number of other things. But this project was super cool to me because part of what I did in geology was study ancient rivers. I studied ancient rivers in a lake system in southwest Wyoming about 60 million years ago, and so it was great for me getting to nerd out and hear geomorphology and fluvial and river talk on this project. I actually took a lot of flack from my colleagues about nerding out with them on the project. And to the point where actually my editor a couple times would text me and say, you know, there was this awesome shot, but I can't use it because you're in the background asking too many questions. So, this was, all said, this was just an awesome project for me. But kind of a journey into how I got into filmmaking, I figured just a little bit of background on me before I talk about documentary film. During my PhD, I shot part-time for a production company in Madison, and then also incorporated film into my PhD. So I shot these fun little educational videos. And part of my research was actually looking into the use of art and film, and we used things like live music and poetry and painting, and of course film, and incorporated them into Geoscience 100 curriculum. And my research was looking at how that affected students' emotional relationship to the curriculum. So it's pretty established that art helps students learn curriculum, and that's all amazing. But there wasn't a lot of research on how it influenced their affective engagement with curriculum. So that was one of the things I studied, and then of course I studied a lot of rocks in southwest Wyoming too. But all that work kind of led to being approached in the last 2 years of grad school by a paleontologist who had just made this amazing discovery, the oldest dinosaur ever discovered in North America. Good friend of mine worked at Wisconsin, and he asked me to tell a story about this project. And that led to kind of my first big solo project that was actually released just a week and a half ago publicly, about the naming of this dinosaur species and working with the Eastern Shoshone, incorporating the indigenous people on whose land it was found to name and do the science together. And that was just a beautiful project to work on. And it was kind of that background of that project and finishing up grad school and finishing the PhD that my wife and I at that point moved to Wenatchee, sight unseen, for her work. And I was kind of like, what am I gonna do in Wenatchee? I don't know, what's in Wenatchee? We had never actually been to Wenatchee. And so I was trying to keep my eyes open for geology jobs, and that's when film jobs came my way like a flood before geology. And it was these guys, the guys at North 40 that I ran into in Wenatchee, that very quickly became good friends, and they would hire me as kind of an as-needed basis, and now I'm working with them. Probably 90% of my time is with North 40, and they've been doing documentary film for 20 years now, and so it's been awesome to kind of slide into that work and help them with their work in amazing restoration videos. We've done a lot of salmon restoration, worked with the tribes in and around the Pacific Northwest. The last 2 years, we've been working on really cool films on addiction and rehabilitation in Central Washington and actually nationally. So it's been a whirlwind of an adventure, and this project has just fit straight into that repertoire. It's been a ton of fun for me. So that's me, that's my background to getting here in front of you today, talking about film and not geology. So, documentary film, what are the things that we think about? And really, there are kind of three main phases of filmmaking. There's pre-production, and I like to think about this as kind of envisioning the materials, the building blocks with which we're going to try and tell a story. There's production, that's the fun part, that's actually rolling the cameras and creating those raw materials. And then there's post-production, which is just the assembly of said materials. Now, pre-production is probably the most tedious, boring, and important part of the whole process. And that is really founding everything. It's basically pre-research. And the first thing we always think about, regardless of the scale, whether it's like the 8.5 minute video you'll be watching after this, or the feature-length documentary we're shooting on addiction rehabilitation, we're always thinking about what is the story we're talking about. And if you remember from introductory English, this 3-act structure, that plays. We still use that, right? And we're thinking about how are we bringing an audience in? What's the hook? How are we going to take an audience through a story? How are we going to create obstacles and create complexity? Then to bring them to this awesome moment at the end and resolve the whole thing. And so while it can be kind of hard in documentary, and I'll get to that in a second, we're always kind of coming back to this in the pre-production phase as we kind of organize our thoughts about any project. Now, within a 3-act structure like this, within any story, there are myriad things we can be thinking about, right? There's the hook, there's how to make characters relatable, there's building conflict and tension, and the list goes on. And when you're script writing or writing a story or screenwriting, it's great. You can be super intentional about writing these things into whatever film you're making. Documentary film is not that simple. This is like simply because documentary film is by definition telling real life stories, and as we all know, real life is messy, right? And so I like this picture because this is my partner Charles. This is actually at Myers Creek at the Triple Creek site, and we went out there one morning just after sunrise to try and film a beautiful sunrise and wildlife. And if I could script it, I would have had the nice mist over the canary grass and a deer and its fawn, walking out of the clouds, and there was nothing. It was absolutely flat. We could see maybe 100 feet, didn't see anything, didn't even hear birds. It was terrible. We got to the point where I was like collecting semi-frozen grasshoppers off the canary grass and then throwing them into the creek to try and get trout to rise. We couldn't pay an animal to come out and behoove us. So Charles was a little spicy that morning. Wasn't the happiest kid on camp. But that's just to illustrate that documentary film can be kind of messy. And our job is to tease out these elements of story and find them and weave them together out of the messiness of life. And that can be challenging as well as fun. So there is a lot of other things to pre-production though, right? We also have to think about our approach. How are we going to represent this story on screen? Are we going to do a film that's interview-driven, covered by B-roll? Are we going to insert ourselves as filmmakers into the story, right? And sometimes I unintentionally do that, like this project, but or are we going to do verite, where it's just a real, filmmakers filming in real time, in real life, and that's exactly what's portrayed on screen. So there's all these different approaches that we can use as we kind of go into storytelling. And often these projects incorporate more than one approach, right? So the film you'll see after this it's mostly interview-driven, which is really common for kind of science-based project like this, but there's also some verite as well as some archival footage that you've already been watching this evening. So we have to think a lot about approach, and that leads us to thinking about style and technical considerations, like what kind of camera we're going to use, right? Do we want really steady, locked-off feel, like the tripod on that camera right there, or do we want to bring the audience into some of the tension with a more handheld feel? What tools are we going to use? Drones, underwater cameras? Are we going to shoot, spherical or anamorphic lenses? And there's all these super esoteric things about filmmaking that we have to know in advance before we even turn a camera on. And we're still not done with pre-production. Then there's logistics, right? We have to understand where we're going, how we're going to get there. In documentary, a lot of what we shoot is outside, right? And so weather plays a huge role in what we're doing. Seasons matter. For this project, we had to shoot at high water, so we needed to be there at a specific window in the spring, and then we needed to be there at another time when we could hopefully see beavers and BDAs go in, so the water had to be a lot lower. A current project we're working on, we're kind of on hold because we're waiting for salmon to hit a specific reach of a stream out on the west side. And as soon as we hear about that, we got to run out there and film salmon. So weather and seasons play a huge role. So does where we're going. A huge project this year required us to fly across the country. So we have to think about weight and batteries and whether or not we have access to power. And all these things play into planning for a production. And it's very tedious. But eventually it takes us to production. And this is my favorite part as a camera operator and sound operator. This is where we get to go and shoot. And this is unfortunately the shortest part of documentary filmmaking, and any filmmaking is rolling cameras. And there's still a lot to think about. So if I dare turn around, a good example is these two pictures on the left, right? You can see these are kind of our interview setups. And hopefully when you watch the film after this, you'll think, oh, that's very natural looking and they're just standing outside. And that's what we want you to think. But those are pretty complicated setups. We're creating shade, we're creating light. We have to bounce light off of a reflector and through diffusion. And as the sun's changing, we have to account for that with the audio setups. We have to account for natural sound. And so we're trying to fight the sound of the stream at the same time as getting the stream into the shot. There's all these things that we think about and control for and shoot around when we're shooting documentaries. And this is an interview setup, right? So this is stuff where we have control. If we're shooting verite or run and gun, in other words, we're trying to think about all these things on the fly as we're going while people are living their life, right? So that's the fun part. And often Charles and I are on headsets talking to each other as we do all this. One of us is on a boom mic and the other's on a camera, or vice versa, 2 cameras. It gets kind of crazy sometimes. So I wanted to give you a little behind the scenes video. We made this fun little social media post about this project when we finished shooting this project, and so I just thought I'd play that for you this evening.
No signs of life, but we have our clients some beaver bait, some willow branches put in the creek here, so maybe the odds went up. I'm optimistic.
Just 3 hour work.
No major action. Time is getting slower and slower. No action still. Hoping our folks got something.
Feels so good. I think it was hour 5. The beavers made their big appearance, and we got the shot. It was fantastic.
Yeah, we got the shot. It was great. Maybe that helps? Yeah. Sorry about this mic thing. So that's an example of slow production, what we like to call hurry up and wait. And often that's the case. And then often the exact opposite is the case, where we are just absolutely all over the place, running like crazy, trying to get a shot, trying not to miss something. And that's a big problem in documentary filmmaking, is often something happens only once, right? And if we aren't ready and we don't get that shot, well, it's a major bummer. So after all this happens, pre-production, post-production, or production, we get the materials, we have all of the footage, and then post-production happens. And this can be weeks, months, sometimes years of work. Hopefully not years, but sometimes. And this has to happen sequentially, right? And so we take our shots and we turn them into scenes. And this is the purview of our editor, Skylar. He's amazing. He has a history working in LA on documentary or kind of reality TV shows, and so he got really sick of reality TV, as can be expected, and decided to join us shooting documentary. And he's amazing. And his job is to take everything we shoot, and based on the conversations and the story that we decide and are trying to aim at based on our pre-production work, to take that and cut it into and weave together that story from huge amounts of footage. So for this project in particular, I think we had a little over 8 hours of footage that he trimmed into an 8.5 minute video, and that's actually not that crazy in our world, right? And so it's a lot of work, and a lot of creativity happens here in shot order. And I think a good example, right, we're thinking about how to tell a story, and in this case, the beavers are a huge part of this project, right? And so a conversation that we had for a good 2 weeks was trying to figure out when in the film to introduce the beaver. Do we want to use it as a hook at the beginning and bring the audience in by showing, we got beavers? Or do we want to kind of hold beavers off for a payout at the end and say, you know, we've been working for so long to get the beavers, and there they are at the end. And it matters, right? How we insert these shots matters in the way the story is told and how the audience relates to the film. And if you can think about that being complicated on a 8-minute video, on a feature-length film, there's so many decisions to be made, and Skylar does an amazing job at that. And so after he's put together the film, we get it to what's called a rough cut, right? And everything's put together in a sequence that we feel pretty good about. And we send it off to the clients and we say, hey, Sarah, Jen, what do y'all think? And they go, it's perfect, let's finish. And that never happens, unfortunately. They say, oh, it's great. But what about this and this? And maybe we tweak this and this. And it comes back to us, and so we then have that conversation and make those changes. Sometimes we push back and we say, well, we did it this way because of this and had to do this. And so after an iterative process and back and forth with whatever client we're working with, and we like working with some clients better than others because the clients that onboard themselves and kind of join us as team members, it's so much better. And this was absolutely one of those projects. It was amazing to work with Sarah and Jen because they were such awesome partners in the project, right? And so some clients aren't like that at all, and it's way more frustrating. But we get it back, and then we create what's called the final cut. And a lot of people think that's when it's ready to go, and it's not. That's when we get to what's called picture lock, right? And we have to lock the picture, and that just means we can't change any more of the footage of the picture because we have to send it to sound design and music. And so this is Reed. He's our sound designer and final masterer of sound. And this is his Portland studio. And any major projects that we have, we all go down to Portland and sit in his studio for 2 or 3 days and go frame by frame, shot by shot, figuring out how the project sounds. And this sounds really tedious, but we like to think that, and this is true, people will watch a pretty bad film that just looks bad and sounds great for a long time. We all do it. That's what social media is, right? But none of us watch really good-looking things that sound terrible. We just turn them off, right? And it's kind of a subconscious thing, but sound matters arguably more than visuals in film. And so his job is supremely important, and we put a lot of effort and time into this that a lot of people don't really understand how much goes into that. And so his job is to create the soundscape. And a lot of what you hear in documentary film is kind of natural sound, but much of it is not what was recorded on cameras. So like the sounds of birds and rivers and maybe the beaver slipping into the stream, the wind in the trees. These are all things that he put in afterwards, after picture was locked, and mixed them in a way that made sense to match the visuals. And it's an art, and he's an artist, and it's awesome. So that's Reed, and we spent a lot of time with him doing that. When he's done, it comes back to us, and we're not even done at this point, because then we have to color grade, right? And so on the far left here is an image of what it looks like in camera. That's what we see when we get the footage out of the camera, and it looks awful, as you can tell. It looks just really gross. And then when we edit, we apply this general, what it's called a lookup table, and it's just a general color space to it so it doesn't look like puke while we edit. And then we send it to Reed and he does his magic. And when we get it back, we do what is called the final color grade. And that's just going, again, shot by shot, frame by frame, and making sure everything looks good, right? We're looking for skin tones, and we're trying to match different tones and colors. And often we shoot things across many days and many lighting situations, and we have to make this whole project feel like one cohesive piece. And that's what the color artist does, the color grader, as they make it feel like one cohesive piece across the entire project. And so that is the final step. And finally, after that, we have a film. And so, without further ado, I think you've listened to me talk about documentary film long enough, and I think it's time to watch this piece. So, thank you.